No One Will Save You is out on Hulu or Disney Plus, depending on the country you're in. New science fiction thriller starring Caitlin Dever, who was the star of Booksmart. The story follows her character, Bryn, a young woman living alone in a nice house on the outskirts of a small American town. There's clearly some past that's haunting her and the other people in town, resulting in her being essentially a pariah. She essentially lives in exile in her home. Nobody wants to speak to her or interact with her in any meaningful way, which becomes a problem when one night her house gets invaded by what appears to be extraterrestrial beings. So I think it's an interesting thriller that sets itself up in several sort of fascinating ways and manages to somewhat deliver on its promises. I don't think it manages to be quite a great movie when all is said and done, but it's an enjoyable watch, and there are elements in it which are really well done. First of all, I like the fact that the film contains essentially no dialogue. There are like 8 words spoken in the entire movie. The first and only actual line spoken by one human character to another character is at 1 hour 9 minutes in, and the whole film is 1 hour 33, I believe, so almost at the end. And everything else in it is just Bryn on her own trying to fight and survive the aliens. And as such, the film has to do a lot of heavy lifting in terms of telling us the story primarily in visual ways and trusting the audience to connect the dots when context is missing, which it largely accomplishes, by the way, with the exception of maybe understanding the ending. I went online afterwards and I saw some discussions which made it clear that various people interpreted the sort of the way the film ends in many different ways. Secondly, I liked the plot twist involving the aliens, which I think is very creative, and I don't want to spoil it, but if you see the film, you'll know perfectly well what I'm talking about. There's a really clever little thing done that further builds on the horror aspects of the movie. I also enjoyed the production design, the sort of old school 1950s vibe that Bryn and her house and her clothing have, and connected to that, the design of aliens and their spaceships, which is overall very retro. Also, Bryn herself is an interesting protagonist because on the one hand, she's smart and capable and deals with what's going on quite well. And on the other hand, she proves to be, well, not exactly a good person that you would expect as a protagonist, not exactly a good person through and through. It has to do with the way the film ends, and which, of course, again, I don't want to spoil. What prevents the movie from being really great, in my opinion, is the fact that, well, what depth it has in terms of character exploration. It's pretty much contained in the opening and ending sequences of the film. The rest is very surface level, and I like my horror and my sci-fi to be more about to be about more than it seems, to have layers. And when you have a movie that's mixing those two genres and is pretty much just surface layer, then it's somewhat disappointing for me always. I also think that the limitations that the movie sets for itself in terms of avoiding dialogue kind of stop it from being able to explore something more in terms of the plot, because obviously you can't do too much complicated stuff when you limit yourself to essentially no exposition. But having said that, it's still a decent film, and I appreciate that even though it doesn't quite succeed at everything it sets out to do, it's trying to do something fresh and new and original, and for that I enjoyed it.